Hello and welcome to Dev Radio. I'm here with Marlon Avery. We're doing a live Ask Me Anything session. I'll do a brief introduction for Marlon. And folks, feel free to put questions in the chat. So I met Marlon when I was starting the Innovation Challenge. And one of the organizations I work with, ByteCon in South Florida, the platform that they were using for their events, the Marlon also uses it. And I think I'm getting this right, Marlon. And so he heard about the Innovation Challenge and reached out to me and said, "Hey, this is who I am. This is what I do." And I was like, "Wow, that's really interesting. I need to work with someone who can really identify with what it means to be a self-taught developer and someone who's had some success." Because for the Innovation Challenge, we're trying to get people skilled up to, get the skills it takes and get the experience it takes to, take your own careers forward. And I've been really excited with meeting Marlon. Our questions. He's honestly one of the most interesting people I can talk to about what people are really doing with AI. He does a lot of educating people as part of the way he does consulting and business development. He's got a lot of wisdom. And I don't know, with that, I'll just kind of stop talking and hand it over to you, Marlon. You wanted to start telling us your story, and I'll ask questions as they come in from the chat or ask my own.
Yeah, definitely. No, I appreciate that, Matt. Also, too, I like the intro and stuff there, the dev radio. So
More fun than
that's
teams, isn't it?
right. That's pretty awesome and stuff there. So no, I appreciate you definitely having me. Yeah, man, Marlon Avery, self-taught software engineer. Grew up in Texas, adulthood mostly in Georgia. Worked out in California, worked out in Florida. Stuff is currently where I'm at right now. And yeah, my journey started all with the idea of sneakers. I was a big fan of sneakers like Air Jordans, Nikes, the Bronze, and at the time I wondered where I can view my sneaker collection and other people's collection on my phone. And at that moment, it wasn't anything out there like it. And so I was like, maybe I should figure out, how to do it. And only thing I knew how to do with apps at that time was download them. I didn't know, what a repo was. I didn't know what IDE was. I didn't know anything. And so I started to teach myself UI UX design because that was kind of like the easiest thing to kind of like transition to. This was probably like 2012 or so. It's probably 2012 or so. Interesting enough, believe it or not, it wasn't a lot of online material of learning how to code back then. Everything was still mostly still in books. And so yeah, so started to teach myself UX and UI design. You don't know what you don't know. I've been using um, Microsoft tools for quite some time, either correctly or incorrectly. Um, so one of the first tools that I didn't know what I was doing, so I designed the first screen of the application in Microsoft Paint. And so that's the only thing I knew at this at the time. And so thankfully somebody saw it and he's like, "Oh man, this is really interesting. What did you design this in?" And I was like, "Microsoft Paint." And they was like, "Yeah, don't do that anymore. Go learn Photoshop immediately." And so I did, and so that kind of took me on trajectory where I learned to learn, Photoshop, and this is before things like Sketch and other platforms still come to existence as well. And so started to teach myself more so of that, and then quickly learned I didn't know enough about how companies should be ran, and then went to go work at the biggest company in the world at the time, which was Uber. Where I started off on the support side, ended up in the Uber Eats team, and then from there started to work into ed tech. Um, and so actually before that, I started to kind of go a little bit deeper. I taught myself how to code. I focus on coding for 6 to 8 hours a day for an entire year, and that's how I taught myself. And so like moved into a friend's garage and just really kind of like focus in for like a whole year. And so coming out of that, I started kind of really understand the concepts of the concepts and everything of the code is mostly like on the front end side. Really start to understand the syntax and everything, but also to start to very much understand why it was difficult for so many people to kind of cross that bridge, if you will. And I became kind of like a master of that, is getting people over a bridge. And so, yeah, from there, we to work at large ed tech companies by the name of Treehouse. Ran a program over there where we taught individuals how to code in 8 to 10 months, and then placed them into roles and stuff at the end of it. And then got the attention by the company, a larger company by the name of Udacity. At the time, which at the time was the second largest ed tech platform and in the country, and went over there. And then I ran about 50% of the engineering courses over there. Um, and then not too long after that, I joined a venture capital firm as engineering director, which I became engineering director of the largest minority-owned venture capital firm based out of the Midwest. And it's kind of where my AI journey started from there. And so, yeah, Matt, I'll pause there. See if you want me to go forward.
I think that you talk about crossing that bridge from getting started to like that moment where like, oh, this is hard. I don't know if I can do this.
Hmm.
That's really hard.
Yeah.
Um, the what you know, how did you approach that, and how do you help others do it? Like, what are some tips and tricks there?
Yeah, I think a couple things. I think self-awareness is a key thing that's not taught, any pretty much in any institution. Um, Having the self-awareness of understanding some of your strengths and some of your weaknesses. So you may be an individual who is impeccable at taking notes, and your weakness may be, you have a short memory or something like that. And so leaning into your strengths to help you, kind of like tackle some of these long-term goals, kind of transition back to self-awareness, I think is key. Um, for me, it was I needed insight, and I needed people who's been there, done that. And so I set a goal to code. So I set a goal like when I was going through this process, and as I was teaching myself, one of the things I kept hearing is like getting your first tech role is the most difficult thing, because everybody's looking for experience, and everybody's looking for, you know, um, somebody with that more years stuff involved, and it's the most difficult thing. And then there's, hundreds, thousands of people applying for that same role. So at that time, LinkedIn was just kind of like popping off, and at the time, I hated LinkedIn, and I was like, yeah, I don't want anything to do with it. And so it was like, hey, you gotta get on there, you gotta talk to the engineering managers and the hiring managers on LinkedIn. And I was like, you know what? Well, I don't have to go talk to them, but what if I start a podcast and I can just go interview them? And I did, and that's how I got my first role. And so I've always like kind of figured out like a back door that kind of works in my strengths, and stuff. And so I think self-awareness is one. Back door is two. And I think the quickest thing too as well, finding people that excuse me, that you can relate to.
Yeah.
Even if you don't have access to people directly, you can go YouTube, you can follow people on LinkedIn and so forth it may be. TikTok and stuff now. Find somebody to relate to and everything to kind of pick some of those principles that they're putting down, kind of like help you fast track your journey. I think it's definitely some of the things that can help.
I think sometimes it's really hard to be aware of what your strengths are when you're struggling, right? 8 hours a day coding, and when just trying to learn, um,
Yeah,
and then figuring out what am I good at here,
yeah,
and I love that focus that you give there. Like, figure out what you're strong at, when for you, also, I think there, that first time someone reached out to you and said, "Hey, here's some help. Try using Photoshop." Um, being able to be
It
open to
wasn't
that
even
and
try, like, go learn it immediately.
immediately. So yeah, listen to those people who can help you.
Stop everything you're doing.
That you mentioned that your first tech role, getting that first job is hard, and it's always been, always as long as people have been writing software, which isn't that long, um,
Mhm.
that starting your first job in tech support is really common. And I know a lot of developers that have wild stories about their tech support days and dealing with that. But how when you're in tech support, you're not quite coding yet. Did that help you with figuring out like what you're good at and where you want to go next? I mean, because the jump from that to podcast is really interesting. How did you checking in every day to the work, still trying to do the learning, and then
Yeah,
do the podcast?
yeah. I mean, at that point, I didn't really think I had a choice. Like, there was no other turn signals and stuff there. And so, I mean, also too, you're talking about. I mean, you're talking about an individual. uh, You know, first person in my family to make six figures. Excuse me. So there was no. It, there was no coming from a network. It wasn't coming from a. Um, there wasn't coming like from this pool of opportunity. You know, literally, you had to create create opportunity in whatever way you could. And
Yeah,
so yeah, I just didn't see it as no other choice, stuff
yeah,
like that. And it also too it just leaned into my creative strengths, and one thing I learned even to today is human beings have no problem about talking about themselves. Um None
yeah,
whatsoever, and we all enjoy that. And so I said, okay, well, if I can find the right people to get them, and also too, it's the beginning of a relationship, so for a
yeah.
lot of ways, and stuff. And so yeah, I honestly I don't even remember. I think if I'm being, I enjoy LinkedIn now. Before I say this, um, I think it was my despise for LinkedIn at that time. This is years ago. Like,
Yeah,
LinkedIn was not a fun place to kind of be on and everything. It was very, I don't know. It was very, I don't know what the term stuff was, but yeah, it wasn't a fun place to be on. And so I think I despised it that much. And I was like, yeah,
yeah,
I refuse.
yeah.
I'll find something else and everything, you know. And I did there.
I think it's interesting that you connected up into the startup community because the startup world is all about identifying people that can create something that hasn't existed before,
Right.
and identifying talent as well. Um,
Mhm.
if you're talking to someone who is trying to figure out where they go right now, sometimes going into the startup world is hard because sometimes the money's not there right away,
Right.
and sometimes you know it's a risk. You're rolling the dice, and then it just again you talk about your family, trying to explain to your family what you're doing. Like they don't even know, right? You got to find a whole new support network. What
Very much so. Yeah.
Yeah, what's it like jumping into the startup world? Or find, did you like connect with someone who was like a VC and they're like, hey, come, how did that happen?
No, that was wild. I was in college too at that time as well. I was in college. I was working three jobs, playing two sports, and then I started to do a startup. I decided to do a startup at the same time. I don't know what I was thinking. I will say this: some of my best work comes out of what I don't think it, when I just start doing. Um, and when I start thinking about it, and I start thinking about how much work it is, I can get overwhelmed. But if I just start doing things, that's some of my best work come out of that. Um, but yeah, that was. that was just all really like a lot of curiosity and just grit and just, I mean, why not? I mean, I was in my early 20s at the time, so it was like, if I work on this for like the next X amount of years and like jack it up, like nothing really, like there's no loss in that because I would have learned so much,
Yeah.
um, and stuff in that process. And so, but no, I didn't meet my first investor to probably like probably like 2 or so years later. I mean, because at that time, I didn't even know I didn't know what investing was at that time, and so I was just focusing on like, okay, how do I get this out to the public? And then every nugent, every step of the way, I just start to learn and grow, and everything from color color palette to icons to CSS to just all types of different stuff through that process. I mean, it was everything. I was teaching myself everything, and then also too the sneaker platform. So the sneaker platform was very interesting, and it's like I would argue now it's still kind of ahead of its time. It was a
Yeah.
virtual closet, um, and so the virtual closet aspect, those shoes I was downloading from the internet, and I was editing like myself. So I would download it from the internet, and I would Photoshop them, out, for like each shoe. And sometimes we had to flip the image to make sure the shoe is facing right, make sure that, the border around it was clean, you know. Um, yeah, we ended up building like I don't know, like a database of like 5,000 shoes, something like that. I mean, at this time there was no API to get access to a bunch of shoes. Like we was creating, all this stuff from scratch and just like going through the process of just like figuring it out just because we wanted to see the product, come to the front face. And yeah, it was just, I tell you this, that building Recure, which was the final name of the secret platform, building Recure, I tell people all the time, was my master's degree.
Yeah.
That was my master's degree because I learned so much, not only about, software and building, but about myself, too as well. Um, because literally it was just an idea, and then boom, a couple thousand people are using it monthly, and it's like, oh man, this is wild and stuff. And
Yeah.
so yeah,
That feeling when like, whoa, I built something and people are using it that's a great feeling.
yeah,
Yeah.
we was kind of touring. We were going to different sneaker events
Yeah.
and stuff and everything, showcasing the app, everything. Yeah, it was interesting.
Let's jump ahead to today. Um, with when you wake up in the morning, how do you figure out what you need to do? Um, yeah, because you got a lot going on.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I've definitely leaned back into the old school checklist, and
Yeah.
stuff for sure. Just trying to keep the party. Yeah, my mission currently right now is to decrease fear, increase creativity, for people around artificial intelligence. Um, I have one of the a very unique, beautiful skill set, where most people can build and not teach, and most people teach cannot build. And I have the ability to do both.
Yeah.
Um, and so, with that, um, we build solutions or anything for small businesses. We also host workshops for small businesses, organizations, nonprofit, governments, software engineers, and mostly teaching it in people and stuff like that. What Gen AI and AI stuff is, but also to the insertion of how to build with it or on top of it. And so, yeah, yeah. Most of my work, most of my time lately has been client focused. just kind of building some of the solutions and everything, for different clients. And so, yeah, I mean, there's a, I think this technology is this technology is interesting because it's changing every 90 days.
Yes.
It's changing every 90 days. And most of the time, 95% of the time, 98% of the time is for the better. It's changing every 90 days. And so, but with that too, you have to change, you might have to change some of your solutions. You may have to upgrade some things for your clients. And so, yeah, it's been really good. It's been really,
Yeah.
really interesting. I think, man, this thing is just not getting started. And so yeah.
Yeah. I think the interesting thing about, doing the teaching is, you're connecting with people that they have something they want to do. There's a reason they're showing up to learn.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that you get, you know, a real understanding of what the market is for this technology
Yeah.
doing that. And, if someone's going to take the time to come to a conference, for example, you definitely want to get a room full of those people in front of you, um, show them what's possible and what pieces they need, and where they take it from there.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
it's a beautiful intersection
yeah,
because it's like you can see the technology like real time API gets released by
yeah,
OpenAI, and you see the possibilities of what you can do and build and stuff like that. But over here, as I'm doing these workshops, you can see how the consumer is responding to advanced voice currently, or if at all. And
yeah,
so, as a builder, I consistently I have a thumb, a pulse on the market, if you will, to understand like what people's mindset it is, where they're, receptive, where they're being receptive and everything too. Because it's like over here in this world with, the Microsofts, the Nvidias, the OpenAIs, like, where they're just building, 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 building. But also too, technology typically doesn't move past human adoption. And so
yeah, yeah,
as a building, human beings over here is like, okay, that's cool, but how do I write a prompt again? You know? Hey, can this connect to my email, and everything? And
yeah,
they're just like, and just like, oh, okay, cool. Okay, what's the next thing? And so yeah, yeah, it gives us the ability to have a good thumb and stuff on where the market and stuff is,
yeah.
and build with the market or a few steps ahead of it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, we don't have too much time left. I want to go back to, you know what you said before about it. It can take more time to do too much analysis and planning, and sometimes you got to get in there and do. And since a lot of people who are watching this are going to be, they're competing in a hackathon, they've got 2 weeks to solve a really hard problem, um, and you got to just get in there and start doing it. Sometimes, I know a lot of developers talk about, flow, and athletes talk about it too. Like,
Mhm.
you can see everything that's happening. You just know where you want to go next and how you do it. Um, the is that I mean, how do you make that happen? Or maybe you don't. Maybe you just, if you naturally love being a developer, you get in and start creating. Or do you have a method or a process for kickstarting the fun part?
Yeah, for me, I start immediately. I do that for two reasons. I do it for to shut up my subconscious that you can't, or this is very too hard, or what it may be. The second thing is if I can figure out 10% of the problem, I can figure out the rest.
Yeah,
Everything. And
yeah,
so and then typically from there I may take a pause and then start planning and start, kind of like, architecting things, thing properly. but I typically I won't just go out and just build a whole thing and stuff like right there and everything. But I do that, at least for myself, just because it's like, as long as you're in this, space, you would think things like imposter syndrome goes away and
Yeah.
everything. And it doesn't go away. You just kind of learn how to put it in its pocket, kind of
Yeah.
put it in its place and everything. And
Yeah.
so things like that I do intentionally. So if I have if a big problem arises, or a new client comes on and I'm like, whew, okay, how do we do that? Um, I'll typically like kind of like do like a quick 10% MVP and stuff of it. And then if I can figure it out, I can figure the rest out and everything. And then from there, it's typically that's typically where the fun kicks in from there.
That really goes back to being self-aware and knowing what your strengths are too. You got to quiet the negative voices and like, no, okay, I've solved hard problems before.
Yeah,
This is where you start,
yeah,
and this is how you do it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Hmm.
and yeah, I like that. I can get 10% of the way there. If I can get 10%, I can finish it. It's just at
Yeah,
some point, it's just elbow grease, right?
yeah, yeah,
Um,
definitely.
so unfortunately, we're at time, and so thanks for coming on. I look forward to continuing to work together. We'll figure out some more cool stuff to do. Get you in front of some more developers.
Yeah,
We've got a couple other videos of you up on this YouTube channel. And if folks want to find you on LinkedIn, I you're good on LinkedIn. I notice your posts. I'm glad you like it now. I know it's not always fun.
yeah.
It's something like I don't want to talk to these people, but I encourage everyone to follow Marlon on LinkedIn. You'll learn something.
Yeah, definitely. I appreciate that. No, Matt, man, definitely appreciate you having me. It's always a pleasure.
Cool. Thanks so much. See you around.
All right.